disturbing information pertaining to AI and pertaining to the 5G that's fixing to come into play, pertaining to how that these computers are basically going to take every bit of people's privacy away from them. Those who are victims of artificial intelligence, please listen to what's right around the corner coming near a neighborhood near you here in America. Please listen. This is very, very important to my viewers.
No one is ever out of sight. There are an estimated 200 million surveillance cameras in China, and now they not only know where you are, they know who you are. In China, big data and artificial intelligence have come together, and their offspring isn't pretty. In fact, the union of technology and data collection can be terrifying. The artificial intelligence systems behind China's ubiquitous cameras are able to recognize different faces. And unlike traditional computers that get overwhelmed with huge amounts of data, AI systems get better and smarter the more information you feed them. So the more faces the cameras in China see, the better the AI systems get at distinguishing between them. The Chinese Communist Party is using this technology to build the ultimate surveillance state. And there are plenty of people willing to help. Among them is an American named David Brady, a professor at Duke University in North Carolina, specializing in optics and high-resolution lenses.
Simply put, are these the most powerful surveillance cameras, most detailed surveillance cameras in the world?
Yeah, these are certainly the highest resolution cameras in the world.
How many cameras?
This has 19 what we call micro cameras inside.
What makes Brady's cameras unique is that they can record an area that's several miles wide in extraordinary detail. Just one camera can monitor a neighborhood, zooming in without losing resolution, and do it all from far enough away that you'd never know you were being watched.
As you zoom in, it switches to higher resolution cameras.
Brady started his research with a grant from the U.S. government, but brought his skills to Shanghai in 2016.
You name any camera company, GoPro or any of the cell phone companies, the cameras are manufactured in China. And so we had to come here to do the manufacturing. It's just not that easy to create a hardware company in the United States.
But this is also where David Brady's customers are. He sells to the local Chinese police force and government.
Do you have any qualms about that? Giving China more tools to monitor its population?
I don't know. There's cameras everywhere in the world. I certainly understand that there are things that are regrettable that every government does, but I don't think people stay up late at night worrying about what cameras are seeing.
But if they did, they'd have plenty to worry about. Keeping tabs on China's population is now a multi-billion-dollar industry. Cameras tracking people's every move around the clock. Futurist Amy Webb says in the most rapidly urbanizing society in the world, AI has taken over from the village gossip.
For many, many years, one of the cultural traditions is that you have a lot of people keeping tabs on the neighbors. And those people report up to the next tranche level of people, and they report up and they report up. And this sort of system of gossip really eventually makes its way to people who can enforce change. And that is nothing new. What's so compelling, I think, about AI is that a lot of these processes can be automated.
And Big Brother isn't just watching anymore, he's calling you out.
The government and the local governments do track some things. For example, the traffic cameras. If you run a red light or you drive too fast, or you drive drunk, yes, they track you.
Even just crossing the street, you are always on camera. And if you jaywalk, you will be caught, shamed, and fined. Now, I'm probably going to be okay because as a foreigner, I'm not in the system for now. It's different for locals. If you do live here and the cameras catch you crossing the street without waiting for the light to change, the AI-backed systems read your face and figure out your name. Then they project your picture on giant screens for everyone to see.
So you cross the street, you jaywalk.
They openly shun you by putting your name and your identity to the rest of the public.
You have to stop for a moment and think about the technological advancements that made that possible. If you're a citizen, it's recognizing your face, recognizing your name, displaying that information, and then, by the way, it typically goes out in a social network, and your acquaintances are notified, but it also then becomes a bad reflection on the people that you know. So there's quite a bit of social peer pressure for everybody to conform.
And remember, it's not just your face in the system. Thanks to data mining, the government knows all about you. And that's when it gets really scary.
In other words, it could affect you renting out an apartment. It could affect you towards buying a house. It could affect you towards what insurance carrier is going to be willing to insure you due to the fact that they're already fully aware that you're a smoker, you got bad health, etc., etc., etc. It's a total violation of people's privacy pertaining to human rights.
Because the government is using all the information it has to rank people by their perceived reliability and loyalty. China is rolling out a program already in place in some cities to assign citizens with what's ominously called a social credit score. It's a grade based on your social media activity, any run-ins with police, your financial status, even who your friends are. And it's shared with everyone from your bank manager to your boss.
So if you're on the wrong side or even being perceived as on the wrong side of the Communist Party, these kind of internal security controls, I think, are profoundly disturbing.
As a former White House advisor, Evan Medeiros spent years studying the Communist Party.
The Chinese government is using artificial intelligence, and in particular the rapid and substantial and impressive advances they've made in facial recognition, as a way to monitor people throughout China.
No, not just a way to monitor people, but a way to dominate people's lives, a way to rule people. This is a completely different level of tyranny, oligarchness, to be able to dictate, dominate our lives based around what the rich man, the ruler, the man in behind all the button switches and bells, that's going to dominate society by.
The largest scale case is what China is doing with its ethnic Muslim population, known as Uyghurs. Chinese authorities have used facial recognition to more efficiently pick them out and have sent hundreds of thousands of them to re-education camps, calling it a war on terror.
They've used AI to create more of a police state in China, and it's deeply disturbing from the perspective of human rights and universal rights.
There's a reason the communist government in China is going to such lengths to watch and control its people. It doesn't want a repeat of history. 30 years ago, pro-democracy protesters took to Tiananmen Square in Beijing to demand change. The army rolled in the tanks, killing an estimated 10,000 people. But ask many young Chinese about it, and they've never heard of it. It's been scrubbed from the internet here, excised from the nation's conscience. Today, Tiananmen Square is closely monitored by surveillance cameras. We asked Professor David Brady about that.
I personally don't.
In other words, they're creating their own data, and in creating their own data, they can manipulate their own history towards what they want people to know and what they want people to remember. 30 years ago of the falling of the Berlin Wall of Ronald Reagan is whenever it started in the process towards ending communism all over the world. But because there was a wall of resistance here in America that did not promptly do the right thing, now it has jeopardized the liberty and the freedom of not just the Americans, but the liberty and the freedom of people all over the world. This is what we have the Reagans and the Bush administration to thank for, because of the world conspiracy in thinking that they was going to be able to dominate and dictate of the will of God, and people that followed after the holy, righteous, living God. This is the results 30 years later towards what you're looking at, which is extremely, extremely dangerous, pertaining to a culture of people that is basically going to be turned into a bunch of robots. A bunch of robots. All the women wear white and all the guys wear blue. You got to cut your hair a certain way. You got to act a certain way. You got to eat a certain food. You got to walk a certain way. You got to, you know what I'm saying? It is an offense up onto the human liberties of the survival of democracy as we know it.
I think it's my position to tell China, in what ways it can use or not use cameras.
And it's obvious that that guy right there does not have no morals. He don't have no principles other than fattening his own wallet and fattening his own pockets, because he's part of the system that is tightening down on people's privacy rights in this regard. It's unlike anything that I've ever heard of or seen pertaining to this this new G5 that's coming in.
Named top 5 or 10 cities in China, most of them have our cameras installed.
Tiananmen Square?
I personally have not been involved in any discussions about use of the cameras in Tiananmen Square. I believe that they have been tested for that application, but as far as I'm aware, they're not being currently used in Tiananmen Square.
Would that make you feel uncomfortable, considering the history of that place?
No, to be honest, I know the history. I've been to Tiananmen Square. I understand the security situation there. I would be proud if our cameras were used in Tiananmen Square.
Really? I don't mean to sound obtuse, but really?
I think that there's a feeling about the government of China and the United States that I don't think is completely fair.
Whatever you think about China's use of technology, futurist Amy Webb says it's another sign of its growing strength.
As critical as I am of what I see the Chinese government doing, a part of me is also in awe of the long-term vision and making good on that long-term vision incrementally. In the United States, we have no national artificial intelligence policy. We have effectively defunded basic research in science and technology. For God's sake, we are arguing in this country about creationism still.
Is China trying to take advantage of our running in place, our political distractions,
I would.
Some experts are now concerned that Chinese high-tech surveillance is reaching way beyond its own borders, right into the heart of the United States. Coming up, is it communications equipment or spy gear?
This is the heart of the system, brain of the system. Right. Every phone call that's made, every internet session that's made, processes through one of these pieces of equipment.
Already, and it's 38 degrees.
I'm on my way to one of the more remote parts of the United States. And and probably the last place you'd expect to find Chinese technology.
This is Dixie Country.
We are a long way from Shanghai.
Pine Bell, this is Kimberly. How can I help you?
Pine Belt Telecoms is not a tech giant by any stretch of the imagination. Set up after World War II to connect rural customers not served by the big providers. Its headquarters are in Arlington, Alabama. Population 456.
Doesn't get much more rural than this. It's pretty rural. We're in the sticks. Yeah, definitely so. You need me back?
Around these parts, if you want to find out about the phone business, John Nettles, president of Pine Belt Telecoms, is the man to talk to.
How dependent are people here on their cell phones, on their communication devices?
As dependent as anybody anywhere is, if not even more so. It's the connection to the world.
Pine Belt serves a community of around 100,000, providing landlines, cell phones, and internet.
This is our main core.
These things on the bottom here are doing the bulk of the work.
Pretty much, yep.
This is the heart of the system, brain of the system.
Right. Every phone call is made, every internet session that's made processes through one of these pieces of equipment.
Equipment made by a Chinese company called ZTE.
And these are all ZTE systems.
Right, ZTE, yeah.
So for this area, all your customer base, effectively everything that they use, their phone, data, internet, comes through this room.
That's correct.
And that's a problem.
Stocks falling sharply again on more trade tensions with China.
A Chinese corporate executive arrested in Canada.
A massive blow to ZTE, banning it from buying any technology or components from U.S. companies.
ZTE and its rival Huawei are enormous telecoms firms. They make vital hardware that connects cell phone calls and provides access to the internet. U.S. intelligence analysts worry that Huawei and ZTE communications devices installed all over the world can be accessed remotely by the Chinese government. In other words, the kind of data mining and AI spying we've seen in China could also be happening in rural Alabama.
The Chinese have laws within their own country that require companies to respond to the government's call for data.
Michael Collins is a leading China analyst for the CIA.
The companies that are beholden to the Communist Party of China are far more beholden to government's orders or requests. They're not requests in China. Right.
President Trump has signed an executive order declaring a national emergency banning U.S. companies from using Chinese telecoms equipment. And while President Trump's order didn't name any particular company, ZTE and Huawei are widely understood to be the target.
Huawei is something that's very dangerous. You look at what they've done from a security standpoint, from a military standpoint, it's very dangerous.
The U.S. is now so concerned about communications equipment being used for spying, it classified China as a foreign adversary. ZTE didn't respond to our request for an interview, but Tim Watkins, Huawei's European vice president, did. He denied his company spies for China and says the U.S. government is stoking fear.
They're using this issue of security as one of the main barriers, if you like, to put up to prevent Huawei becoming a real success in America.
So you're saying they're accusing Huawei of being a piece of the security state in China as an excuse to knock it off the market?
Well, that's right, but we're a private company. We're not associated with the Chinese government.
These companies want their international reputation to be legitimate, that they don't want to be seen under the thumb of the Communist Party of China.
Collins is still concerned, mainly because of what ZTE and Huawei plan to do next. Their ambition is to dominate 5G, the next generation of super-fast mobile communications. It will be the backbone of the next global telecommunication network.
And it will be the beginning phases of the backbone of quantum physics that will revolutionize the internet global community in ways like we cannot even begin to imagine.
The CIA and other Western intelligence services are so troubled by the prospect of China controlling 5G, they're uncomfortable even talking about it.
It creates a major vulnerability. I'll just leave it at that.
Back in Arlington, Alabama, the whole controversy seems very far away.
You know why it becomes such of a vulnerability for the Americans? Because our previous old politicians sat idly by and was blinded to this newer technology, and because they did not allow for the American people to climb on board during the time that China, India, North Korea, Russia, and other places was advancing and escalating, we was declining. And if anybody should be angry because of what went on in 2016 pertaining to data infiltration pertaining to our election, it should be it should be the American people pertaining to the previous politicians that did not stay on board towards competing with other international global tech savvy giants throughout the world that allowed for them to get ahead the way that they did throughout the past 25 and 30 years. And once more, now we are basically, I'm going to use the analogy of sucking hind tit, of getting a small amount of milk in comparison to what other major giants are doing. So if we really have anybody to blame, it's the old previous politicians that kept us all blinded and kept us all vulnerable until we got blindsided by all this new world technology that's now even advancing from the stage that it's in now, going to a completely different stage pertaining to G5. It's a heartbreak in what the Reagans and the Bushes created or started that has set us onto the wrong sail pertaining to global competition. Whenever Donald Trump talks about the past previous 3 or 4 administrations, that's exactly who has let us all down. I'm going to use that. Just let us down.
Here, everything stops for lunch.
Fried chicken. That looks like ribs.
Which means a trip to John's mother's house.
I'm the youngest of 5 kids. We all grew up here. So yeah, we got pretty deep roots here.
Deep roots which tie John to his local community. He knows his customers.
Good play, Avery.
Many of them are his friends.
I feel like it's pretty tight. We're neighbors, depend on each other, so.
John says he brought Chinese telecom gear to Alabama because it worked well and fit his budget.
Everything wires into here.
He says now he feels like collateral damage in a wider international dispute.
If you were to strip out the ZTE components, and now the U.S. government is saying those could be dangerous for national security, how much would that cost you to do?
At least $8 million. More than likely, at the end of the day, probably closer to 10.
Do you have that kind of money?
We don't. We sure don't.
Across America, it's estimated there are as many as 150 small telecoms companies just like John's that have installed Chinese equipment. Intelligence agencies believe the hardware used to spy on Americans is already here.
Do you think that the Chinese government is using the equipment that you have?
What did he just say? What did that man just say?
Using the equipment that you have here in your company to spy on Americans?
No, I don't. I mean, I've certainly not seen any evidence of it. Never been told that that was happening.
Do you think that China would be interested in the data that you have, that your servers are collecting about internet use, phone use in this community?
That's pretty unlikely. I doubt it. I mean, where are they going? They're going to spy on the pine trees and the cows?
No, they're not going to spy on the pine trees and the cows. But what they will do is use your server for a link up that will go to somebody else's server, that will go to somebody else's server, that eventually they will find out critical information about what the heck's going on over here in America. And some of that stuff that they'll find out is stuff that we really aren't too privy towards wanting them to know. That's what guys like him don't understand. It leaves a trail. It's a link. It's kind of like our electric grid system. Our electric grid system can be interchanged from either going from the west coast to the east coast or the east coast to the west coast. They can also go from the north to the south to the south to the north. They can direct it in any direction that they want. Whoever is needing that availability, let's use the analogy, horsepower. Whoever is demanding that type of usage, they can direct it over to Portland, Oregon, or over to California, or back over to New York. Do you not think that they can do the same right here on using this same type of analogy pertaining to the internet? Sure they can. Sure they can. These people are so advanced beyond our understanding. We're almost in the 20th century in comparison to a lot of these countries that are in the 21st century. They're that far advanced above and beyond where we are.
Probably not.
So no, they don't want to know about the pine trees and the cows, but they can use the instruments that's already there in jumping from line to line, from neighborhood to neighborhood, until they finally get the information that they're actually wanting.
Maybe he's right, or maybe the CIA is. Either way, back on the other side of the world, a nation that believes there's only room in the sky for one sun seems determined to continue its spectacular rise and take what it sees as its rightful place in the world, on top.
China's on a really fast upward trajectory.
And it is big and bold and brash.
Every 3.5 days, there's a new billion-dollar company being created here.
Every 3.5 days, a new billion-dollar company created right there.
So right now we're at the center of the new global economy.
Yes. What you're looking at is like the new New York, the new Wall Street.
As a New Yorker, I'm going to remember that line. This is the new Manhattan. This is the new New York skyline. That's all for this edition of On Assignment. We'll see you again next time. I'm Richard Engel, and from all of us at NBC News, good night.
That should wake some people up that are on top of the game or trying to get on top of the game pertaining to all this newer technology. But the older generation that's like my age or in their 60s or in their 70s, do you think that they're going to be interested in trying to figure this stuff out? No. They're going to be interested in fulfilling their retirement, sitting on a back porch somewhere, maybe swinging a rod and reel and enjoying life, what little bit of life that they have left. It is so sad of what the Reagans and the Bushes done towards not fulfilling the inner fundamental steps of where we should be right now in comparison to where we are not. And you can judge that, you can gauge that off of other countries that are excelling and exceeding and evolving in ways like most of the American people can't even imagine. Thanks for listening to my viewers. Good luck to all of us. And once more, shalom.